this Jesus? Who is this Jesus? Today we're going to start a 4-week journey, if you will. 4-week journey, the road to the King. The road to the King as we lead up to Palm Sunday and ultimately as we lead into Easter. Today is the first message in the road to the King. We've titled it, Who is this Jesus? You know, the clocks are changing. It's been warm outside this week. The official first day of spring is, I think, Friday, if I remember correctly. So we can officially say that spring is just around the corner. I found this picture years ago and I thought it was clever.
Yes.
Spring is just around the corner. As for me, I could not be happier that we are heading into warmer weather.
Yes.
However, I wonder, did anyone almost have a heart attack this week when you got your Potomac Edison bill? Because I almost did. I just about tapped out there for a second because I was like, wow, this has more zeros than my report card did. I was a little sneaking back there for, got that one, didn't you? More zeros than my report card? No, I was like, whoa, maybe I got mine and the neighbors or something here, but you know, I'm really glad it's coming up and it's the snow hopefully is behind us, and although they're claiming this week's gonna be cold again, so I don't know, we'll have to wait and see, but I'm excited. It begins Friday, you know, and spring is the first day of the equinox where you have kind of equal parts, night and day. And for me, it's been wonderful to go outside, and it's only, you know, like 6:30, 7 o'clock, and you still have a little bit of daylight left over. You can enjoy outside and put things on the grill and clean up outside and do all those things that we've kind of not been able to do over the winter. And you know, spring, it just brings in this new fresh life, doesn't it? Flowers are starting to come back. The tulips and the daffodils, usually they're the first ones to shoot up through the soil. Some of the birds are starting to migrate back. They're coming back from their winter retreat. So spring is such a wonderful period that we get to enjoy kind of this new birth, you know, this newness that is coming back. For me and Allison, one thing that we really enjoy, well, she enjoys it more than me, is it's softball season again. You know, she really likes softball. That's kind of her sport, and she was able to join again this year up at Hancock, and we had our first practice this week. It was actually on Tuesday, and it was 85 degrees. I was like, man, how can you not practice on an 85-degree day? So I took over the team this year as the coach and the manager of the team, and we've already kind of started to, some of the girls, they're aged between 13 and 15 is the age they are. And they're all from like Hancock and that direction, like over in Walkersburg and Southern Fulton and kind of that area. And we have 2 girls from Big Pool. But anyway, we've already been having some laughs because I can't remember their names. Do you have that problem too? I just, for some reason, I cannot remember names all that well. But I did find this out, which makes me feel better. Research actually shows that 70% of adults report difficulty recalling names, even if they clearly know the person's face. So I always think, well, okay, good. I'm at least in the majority here, but I can't remember your name. I've told them on a joke, and maybe we have to go back to this, that we should all wear name tags. That way we all know. Because then we would all know each other's names, and it wouldn't have this awkwardness that I forget their names. So I give them all nicknames. Then I forget their nicknames. But you know, our name is interesting because isn't really our name what our identity really is? And I remember when I was a kid in the 6th grade, I rode Randy Buzzard's bus. And I think his bus number was 23. I'm pretty sure that's what the bus number was when I went to school. And it was the first time in the 6th grade that you kind of go on the big kids bus, because up until that point you went on the elementary school bus, and then you go to the big kids bus in the 6th grade, because the middle school and the high school all rode the same school bus together. And we were new to the neighborhood. Mother had recently just purchased a house there in this new development, so we had moved over the summer, and I was getting ready to go to the school for the first day. Well, needless to say, I didn't know any of the neighborhood kids. I certainly didn't know anybody at the school. They didn't know me. So I was a little shy, because here I am, getting ready to go into this new environment that no one knows who I am. So after a couple of days, the kids on the bus, they was, of course, hey, there's a new kid. What's your name? What's your name? What's your name? And I was a little backward shy then, so I wouldn't tell them. I thought, well, if you want to know my name, maybe you should try to guess it. And they would guess anything but my name. So finally, one day, we were on the bus ride home, and we kind of got into the development there where we lived, and the one guy asked me, he says, are you ever going to tell us your name? I said, not really. I'm still kind of that shy guy. And they said, well, we'll give you a name then. I thought, okay. So don't ask me how, or don't ask me why, but they came up with the name of Ralph. And that's what they called me. And literally, that name stuck with me throughout my entire time in middle school and high school. The whole time, that's what people would call me.
Oh, goodness.
They called me Ralph. And it's funny because everyone called me this. My teachers would call me this. My friends would call me this. Everyone would call me this name. They would call me Ralph, not Randy. And it did follow me up through high school, all the way until today. If I run into people from my high school, that's what they'll call me. And I have to pause for a second thinking, oh yeah, that's me. I almost forget my own name. How bad is that, right? But I remember I sat next to this girl on the school bus. I think she either sat in front of me or behind me or beside. She was right there beside me. And I kind of had a crush on her, just a little bit. And I remember she got to talking about this kid that was on, she got the bus list of who was also on the bus. It was one of the first couple of days of school. And she kept asking me, I was in 8th or 9th grade, and we were going on to the bus list. And she's like, who's this kid? And I said, who? She says, Randy Bivens, who's that? I said, well, that's me. And she said, well, I thought your name was Ralph. I said, well, yeah, it is, but my real name's Randy. So even people didn't realize that they thought that's what my name was. So it kind of became who I was in high school, And I was telling you, I run into schoolmates now, and they call me that. And I have to think for a second, oh yeah, they're talking about me for a second. But a name is more than a label, really. It's a belonging, it's recognition, it's really who we are. And whenever I was a new kid on Randy Buzzard's bus, I quickly learned what it felt like when people didn't know who my name was. And how quickly this new identity kind of took over, and how that name really stuck to me. Because although I was shy, I really did have a desire to be known. And I did have that awkwardness having been misnamed. And it's strange how a new name can shape the way others can see you. I wasn't Ralph, but for years, people thought that I was. And every time I'd have to remember, when they'd say it, oh yeah, that's me. That's me. Because I believe when people don't know your name, they really don't know who you are, do they? When they don't know your name. That's exactly what we're going to see in the gospel message today. Jesus took his disciples, men who have eaten with him, who have walked with him, who watched him heal people. They listened to him teach, and yet he asked them, who do you say that I am? So if you turn in your Bible, we're going to go to Matthew chapter 16. And you're going to hear a lot of echoing from what Lincoln read in the book of Mark in his gospel message. So it's in Matthew chapter number 16 when Jesus is going to ask a question. Matthew 16, and it starts at verse number 13, and we're going to read 13 to 18. Just a few verses today. So when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? They replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others say Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. But what about you, he asked, who do you say that I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Jesus replied, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for it was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but from my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will never overcome it. The reading of God's word for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God. So before we really dig too deep in this message, I want to point out a unique couple of verses here at the start. So he begins by saying where we are geographically, which is so important to give context to these verses. So he says here, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi. So I put a map up here for you, so that way you can see it. It's on the bottom here of Mount Hermon. It's right next to the city of Dan. You can kind of see it there where that red area is pointed. That is Caesarea Philippi. It's about 15 miles of the Sea of Galilee is about where we're talking about. It's about that area. It's on the foothills of Mount Hermon, 15 miles north of Sea of Galilee. Now, why it's important is a few reasons. This region that we're talking about here was notorious for the time of day to have pagan worship. The pagan worship was rampant in this area. And I'll show you here in just a second a couple of examples. It was also known as another city name known as Patyrus. And what that meant was it was named after a Greek god named Pan. So the city itself was named after a Greek god. So we can see already the paganism that's in this here town, don't we? And this is where Jesus is about to make this statement that he just makes. He's here, he's in the Caesarea Philippi area. As you can see, Jesus really, his ministry was really in this area more than anywhere else. It was a very congested or a condensed area that he ministered in during his time. So this is where he's at. And this is where he asked the disciples the question, but who do you say that I am? So he's there. We see paganism. We see the city itself is named after a pagan god. It has this massive cave, which I'm about to show you. There's still remnants of this cave today. So the left-hand picture is the site of this cave that is at Caesarea Philippi. On the left, you can still see the temple, the pillar there. And on the right-hand side of the screen is this a rendering or a drawing of what it maybe looked like during this time period. So the left picture is kind of what it looks like today. The right-hand picture is kind of what they believe maybe it would have looked like during Jesus' time when he's ministering there. So it's interesting that he picks this location to ask this question. And I think it's revealed to us by the end of maybe why. So you see this area, it's dominated by pagan worship. The cave was essential to the fertility clinic of Pan. They believed that this cave would lead you to the underground, to the depths of the earth that was bottomless. It fed water into the Jordan River. So they really thought this place was a pagan god because this is where you go to the end of the earth in here, which is interesting, and we'll connect the dots here in just a second. The Old Testament would also tell us that this northeast region of Israel, they became a Baal worship. They worship false gods. That's what they would do. It's in this region, this same area where Jesus is standing at today. And actually, if you go back one, you can kind of see how close they are. You see where the arrow is pointing, and then you see the little town right next to it called Dan. You see it there? It's kind of hard, and unfortunately my pointer doesn't work on the screen, but it's just to the left of that arrow. That's the city of Dan. What's interesting about that city is it's right there in that same region. It's only a couple miles apart. Under the first king of Israel, under the divided kingdom, Jeroboam establishes 2 golden calves and an altar there in order to worship these false gods. So you can already see where we're talking about here, don't you? You kind of get that picture of this region being so involved in idolatry and Baal worship and Pan worship and idol worship. And just remember, what were the 2 downfalls of Israel? There was really 2. They could be really summed up in 2. Love of God and love of neighbor, right? So if we don't have love for a neighbor, we call that an injustice, right? If we don't have love for God, we consider that idolatry or syncretism. And what all that really means is, if I have idolatry in the region, what it really means, I practice the cult religions. I don't worship Yahweh no more. I don't worship God no more. I'm worshiping other things, other stuff. And syncretism is just the blending of the two. So I'm going to take a little bit of pagan worship and I'm going to try to blend it somehow into my God worship and somehow make that work. And those were the two big things that were the downfall of Israel. That's why we have the 10 Commandments. Love of God, love for each other. And Jesus would come back and say, remember that? The whole law can be summed up in two things. Love me, love your neighbor. So Jesus could have picked anywhere to ask this question. But where does he ask it? In a land full of idolatry. He literally standing probably in the gates to the opening there. You know what that was called? The gates of Hades. That's what that was called. That's what they referred to it as in that time. So Jesus is there. So isn't it interesting? It doesn't just say Jesus asked a question. No, it tells us where Jesus was when he asked the question. I'm in Caesarea Philippi, idolatry country, and I'm going to ask a question. Because that question starts the journey, doesn't it? The question that starts the journey. He asked them, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he questioned his disciples. Who do people say the Son of Man is? Who do they say that I am? Because before we can start Holy Week, before we can really start down this road to the King, we have to be clarified. We need to have clarity. Jesus invites us to have reflection, and he invites us to answer a question. Because as Christians and followers of Christ, we must remember that the journey to the cross requires knowing of the one who walks ahead. Let me say that one again. The journey to the cross requires knowing the one who walks ahead. So Jesus asked the disciples, who do people say that I am? Uh-oh. There we go. Sorry about that. So they asked him, who do they say that I am? Now listen to their responses. Listen to who they say. Some say that you're John the Baptist. Others say you're Elijah. Others say Jeremiah. Or maybe one of the other prophets. That's what the world say. You see. They say. They say. You see that part? Who do they say that I am? Maybe you're John the Baptist. You're a reformer. Maybe you're Elijah, a prophet, a miracle prophet worker. Maybe you're Jeremiah, a truth teller. Maybe you're one of the other prophets, they say. You know, there are good answers. They're not maybe necessarily wrong, but they're incomplete, aren't they? They fall short. If we were today to go out into the streets and we were to ask people, who is this Jesus? What kind of answers might we get? Think about this. He asked the culture of the day in Caesarea Philippi, what do these people say I am? What if we were to walk out in a big pool and stop every car going down 40? And we were to say, who is Jesus? What kind of answers might we get? Maybe he was a teacher. Maybe he was a spiritual influencer. Maybe he's an inspirational figure. Maybe he's a symbol of kindness. Those all sound respectful, don't they? Even positive. But they fall short of worship, don't they? They admire Jesus without actually bowing to Jesus. Here's the real truth. Opinions are not revelations. They describe Jesus without surrendering to him. That's the danger. A Jesus you will admire will never change your life. It's only a Jesus that you surrender to that will. So he walks out and he asks the disciples, who do people say that I am? He asks a question in pagan country. literally standing at the gates of Hades, that opening to the underworld. And he asked them a question. You see, the disciples had proximity to Jesus, didn't they? Could you imagine them for just a second? They walked down dusty roads with him. They watched the miracles that he performed. They heard sermons spoken directly from his lips. They shared with him. They shared laughter with him. They shared struggles with him. They shared long days of ministry to them. Yet Jesus asked them a question. But who do you say that I am? So he doesn't ask no longer, who do they say I am? It gets personal now. Who do you 12 say that I am? Jesus had to ask the question. He asked them too. Because just because you're near somebody that goes to church, or maybe because you're near a church, doesn't necessarily mean you have the revelation or a relationship with Jesus, does it? Doesn't. He asked the people, he asked the disciples, he asked the 12, who do you say that I am? He doesn't say who, he no longer asks, who do the crowd say I am? Who do the rumors say I am? Who do the religious leaders say that I am? No. He asked the ones who walked with him, the ones who talked with him, the ones who knew him up close. They asked them, who do you say that I am? Almost like asking them, do you know what my name is? Do you know who I really am? Because just like me, my classmates thought I was Ralph. And the people of Jesus' time, they had all kinds of answers of who Jesus was. He was a prophet. He was a teacher. He was Elijah. He was John the Baptist, a miracle worker, a political hope, a threat. But none of them knew his true name. And then in the next verses here, Peter has a revelation. In verse 16, it says, Simon Peter answered, after he asked again, who do you say that I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but it was revealed to you by my Father whom is in heaven. He tells them, he says, who do you say that I am? You are the Messiah. You are the Son of God. You see, Peter didn't know that because of the culture of the day, did it? They asked the question, who do people say that I am? Peter says, you are the Messiah, because it was revealed to him by God, wasn't it? Jesus affirms it. This was revealed to you by my Father in heaven. Peter didn't figure this out all on his own. God opened his eyes. God opened his eyes. Because revelation is not a gift. It's not a guess. Think of that. Revelation is a gift, not a guess. While others speculated about Jesus, the crowd may have admired him, but Peter adored him. The crowds maybe respected Jesus, but Peter recognized who he was. And that confession becomes the cornerstone of our belief, isn't it? Who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Look at verse 18. Then I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. He says this in Caesarea Philippi, home of shrines, home of fake gods, false gods, other deities. And they're saying that on this massive rock, right there, on this massive rock, to the gate to what they believe is the underground. Literally, they standing in the front of the gates of Hades, and Jesus says, I am the Son of the living God. Peter says, you are the Messiah. This region, Israel themselves, think of that. Israel's kings themselves led people astray. They led them to false worship. The Israel kings were terrible. That's why they fell. The kingdoms fell. But what does Jesus say in this verse that we read back in Daniel? His dominion is an everlasting dominion, will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. Never. And he tells Peter, standing at this place, the gates of Hades is not going to overcome you. They stood in front of the gates to Hades. And he tells them, I'm going to build my rock. I'm going to build my church. I'm going to build a new community of people right here. Right here. Think of that for a second. The gates of Hades will not overcome it. He's claiming dominion power over this place, isn't he? Jesus is. Isn't it interesting that the geography here becomes part of the story? Think about that. Jesus didn't reveal this revelation in Jerusalem, did it? No. He didn't do it in a temple. He didn't do it in a synagogue. He did it in a place that had spiritual confusion, idolatry, and fear. That's where he asked the question. Because there's light in a dark place. Amen. There's light in a dark place. This would have been a dark place, and here comes the light. So why it matters as we march toward Holy Week. Why does it matter? Because you can't be a follower of Jesus if you can't identify him. Ooh. Does that cut you to the bone? You can't be a follower of him if you can't identify him. Who is Jesus? If you ask the world, they're going to give you an answer. They asked the people of Caesarea Philippi. They gave an answer. And Jesus says, it doesn't matter what they say. What I'm asking you is, who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Because if you only see Jesus as a teacher, you're going to listen. If you only see him as a healer, you're going to ask him. If you only see him as a comforter, you might even visit him. But if he is your Messiah, if he is the Son of the living God, then you're going to trust him and you're going to follow him. Revelation led to recognition in Peter. Recognition leads to surrender. Surrender leads to discipleship. So we have a closing question for you. This goes to Parkhead. This is where the message lands home. Jesus' question is not theoretical. It's not ancient history. It's not even something that someone else can answer on your behalf. Who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? We're not working. Jesus asked us that question today. As we are leading down this road to the King, as we are leading toward Passover, as we are marching down spiritually towards Resurrection Sunday, Jesus asked the same question today as he did there. Who do you say that I am? We live in a world of mistaken identities, didn't we? About who Jesus is. In a world that guesses, they assume, sometimes they get it wrong. In a world that will gladly call you Ralph when your name is Randy. And in a world where they'll call Jesus anything but Lord. But Jesus didn't ask the crowd. He didn't ask the culture. He doesn't ask your family. He doesn't ask your friends. He doesn't even ask your church. He asks you, who do you say that I am? Because your answer changes everything. Your answer is your faith, it's your hope, your purpose, your future. Your answer gives you direction for life. It gives you a condition for your soul. Your answer is the difference between knowing about Jesus and knowing who he is. So today, as we leave this place, as we walk out those doors, may this question echo in your heart. Who do you say that I am? Who is this Jesus? Amen? That's what Jesus asked us. Who do you say that I am? We can't have a relationship with him if we can't identify who he is.